this computer. Great, so we're now recording. I'm going to kick off another meeting of the Drupal's Kubernetes SIG. I'm not quite sure what we're calling it yet, but that comes close. Agenda doc is in the Slack channel, so it should be pretty straightforward. We're going to start with some introductions. Today on the agenda, we basically have a couple of items. We're going to get a little bit of insight from some people that attended KubeCon to see what they thought of it, maybe some insights into some of the directions they picked up on. We're going to go over a couple of presentations. I think one was from Jeff Geeling and one was from Tess Flynn at a recent Drupal event. So I think really starting to highlight some of the efforts that people are putting out there to communicate about Kubernetes and Drupal is a good thing. And then we're going to end by talking a little bit about DrupalCon Amsterdam and maybe start formulating some ideas about how we can collaborate there and maybe get a little bit more cohesive about these conversations. We'll also give people a chance to share any additional celebrations or challenges that they're looking at or encountering, and that should be a fairly decent meeting for us. So let's go ahead and just go around the Zooms real quick and maybe do a 30-second introduction, trying to keep it a little bit short because we would like to get through some of this content. So let's start with Michael.
Yep. Hello, everybody. Michael, or people know me as Schnitzel in the Drupal community. I work at Amazy, CTO at Amazy. I work together with Tom, that was joining in the last couple of SIGs. Yeah, I think that's it.
Cool. Jason, I think you and Nick are up next. You're muted.
Always. Jason Roberts, platform architect for DDEV Live. Been working with Kubernetes for quite a while. Currently in Europe, went to KubeCon Barcelona.
Yep, so Nicholas Hema, also a software engineer on DDEV Live. And been around Kubernetes for a year and a half now, and every day is another day learning some Drupal facts.
Excellent.
I guess I can...
Go ahead, Florian. Sorry, I was on mute.
Yeah, so I'm Florian Lorcan, CTO at Wunder, and I'm also working with our ops team to set up our Kubernetes cluster.
Cool. Brad?
Yeah, Brad Jones. I'm a freelancer in Denver. I'm also sort of captive these days at Fruition, which is a digital agency in Denver, kind of their de facto product owner for sort of an in-house, not commodity hosting product on Kubernetes. And for suggestions on things maybe to talk about today, I'm almost kind of wondering if a lot of the kind of questions that are coming up in Slack and maybe sort of this SIG are more like a 12-factor app kind of SIG, or if that's a separate kind of thing. And also interested to see what everybody is sort of doing about like the other hard questions once you answer the first hard questions, like you know, we've kind of rolled our own like asset population kind of workflow for like standing up projects and getting them into, you know, persistent storage and stuff like that. So I know that's kind of a lot out there, but primarily I'm kind of thinking it would be great to maybe see if there's some overlap with the 12-factor app sort of concepts more broadly with this group and what people are looking at there.
Excellent. Siva, I believe you're next.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Shiva. I work for fraternityops.com. We are working to build a product on Kubernetes, and we are building a dashboard where Drupal can be deployed in a single click. So I just started 3 weeks ago. I'm completely new to Kubernetes. I'm just learning on the basics. Meanwhile, I'm also exploring different pipelines. Like last 2 weeks, I was working on Rancher, and this week I'm working on using drone as a pipeline. So most of my work is concentrated on running, doing continuous deployment for Drupal.
Cool. Let's see, Sean's next.
My name is Sean Stratton. I'm based in Atlanta. I'm a SRE at Drud or a DDev Live. My interest with Kubernetes and PHP in general goes back to Kubernetes 3 years, PHP about 13 years now, 14 years. So primarily here in more of a listening capacity, just to kind of get an understanding of where we're headed.
Cool. Ellie?
Hi, I'm Ellie. I work for Open Strategy Partners, kind of with the folks at DDev. So that's what I'm up to here.
Cool. And Tess?
Hello, I'm Tess Flynn. A lot of people call me Socket Wench, and I'm the DevOps engineer for 10.7.
Excellent. Cool. Well, just hopping along with the agenda to keep things on track. I think we have a couple of people that attended KubeCon and would like to give some updates. So I know Jason and Nick both attended. Did anybody else have the opportunity? Cool. So let's go over to you, Jason.
Sure. So I will preface, I've been to 3 KubeCons, I guess you can almost say 4 if you count OSCON 2015. 1 5-year anniversary this year of Kubernetes going general availability or 1.0. So that was cool to be a part of. Just a lot there to celebrate, and just seeing just how far it has come, and pretty much now it's the de facto platform that people are either using right now or every large and small organization is trying to move towards, which has its own implications that I won't get into here. But the couple of the announcements I think I've seen posted, some of them were in Slack and our Slack channel. Some of them I think have gotten quite a bit of press. The service mesh interface was one of the big, I know, announcements, initiatives. I know Istio questions have come up in the channel. So it looks like now the goal, just like with like the container storage interface, is to standardize around an API for a service mesh provider such as Istio, or pick whatever you want, can provide service mesh as a service. The cool thing about this is that it will standardize the service mesh pattern and API quite a bit more. So it makes it a lot. It makes it a lot easier, and you will have a lot more flexibility in switching out service meshes instead of having to worry about Istio's API versus Linkerd or others. So that's a really exciting announcement in the world of service mesh. Another big challenge that came up that I remember is the unification of observability. And observabilities in Cloud Native is really defined around logs, instrumentation metrics, and tracing. It was really more of a challenge, and this is with one of the keynotes, we actually need to come together as a community to solve this problem. And how do we tie those 3 tracks are very similar, but they're different enough that the implementation and the technology, so like for logs, people are still doing event streams, metrics, open metrics / most people know as Prometheus has become the de facto standard. And then the Open Tracing project has shown some success. Right now, the Cloud Native Foundation, or at least the channel
No, sounds like the challenges of being in Berlin at a
Yeah, his video stopped already a couple of seconds ago, so maybe that was Zoom desperately trying to get it running.
I assume they're typing in Slack now, so Zoom crashed basically. Jan, I just noticed that you joined, and basically what we were doing was giving kind of an overview of Kubernetes Acute Con. Maybe give a couple of words about what you saw there, what you enjoyed there, what you learned.
So I was interested mainly in two topics. Anything related to operators, and we have Jason back. Maybe you'd like to finish his thoughts, and then I will follow after.
Perfect.
Sorry about that. So I don't know where I got cut off there. Metrics unification is one of them. I think you're going to see a lot more movement in what we're now starting to call Kube native APIs, where providers and even third-party services are directly accessible and integrated into the control plane, like custom resource definitions or using API aggregation. You're seeing this is probably one of the more explosive arenas where we're seeing development and growth. So I actually think that as more people are using Kubernetes, and especially for users who are getting into running their applications and getting into more trying to write operators or custom logic, integration with a Kube native API for another service, like even your cloud provider service from machine, like the machine API, the cluster API. There's going to be a lot of growth in this area. It's really exciting. I've talked a lot. We got Nick here who also went, and Jan there too.
Yeah. To kind of preface how Jason did, it's my second KubeCon. First one was December 2017 when I knew about this much about Kubernetes, but everything was just flashing lights and computer screens. But that being said, I think there's a stark contrast between that initial Kubernetes or KubeCon that I went to and the one that was last month, mostly because there was a lot of talk and a lot of growth around personally really how to easily implement operators. So those are the big talks that I went to, and you know, it's great that they also have a lot of this, a lot of these slides online. So you know, it seems like this big scary beast, but with the Kube Builder project and with a lot of open source operators out there already, being able to develop and create your own operators and controllers are, I'd say, substantially easier than even 6 months ago. So, you know, operators and custom API servers definitely feel like the next step for Kubernetes because, in a sense, you're being able to write your own truly custom logic on top of Kubernetes instead of using Kubernetes resources to try to retrofit what you had previously. That makes sense. Yeah.
Cool. Jan, did you have?
So maybe I can follow with my 2 cents. I was kind of like other guys, mainly interested in the operators and managers. And one of my favorite talks was from a senior Google engineer. And he was talking about how they designed the controllers and how they were approaching the design of the Kubernetes native controllers, the original control plane. And it was interesting to see how they made everything even more granular than we were trying to accomplish. So for every operation, they would have a different controller. There would be one controller handling a certain part of the resource, another controller handling different part of the resource, another controller for deletion and cleanup. So that was very interesting, and I think it is worth following that approach because they have been very successful with it. And another track that I was very interested in attending is related to failure stories. I have kind of a strange joy and knowing that other people make mistakes as well, that it's not only me who make mistakes. And it is a great learning opportunity in seeing how they recover, how they try to prevent the mistakes from happening. And it's always good to see how they try to prevent. Yeah, that's all I wanted to say.
Cool. Florian, I think, shared a link earlier in the Slack channel to the playlist for that Kubernetes, and we'll resurface that and get it into this document so that people can reference it. There is a significant amount of content there. There is a significant amount of information there. So it sounds like it was a pretty good event. Cool. Next up on the agenda, I think we're kind of refocusing on the outreach that the Drupal community is doing, and right now it seems like we just had an event, Flyover Camp, where 2 presentations were given that have gotten a lot of positive comments that I've seen. I know one, I believe, was from Tess Flynn, and the other one was from Jeff Geeling, unless I'm mistaken. Tess, can you spend a few minutes maybe giving us an overview of your session and just give us a few of your thoughts on Kubernetes and whatever comes to mind?
I'll see how long my voice lasts. It's basically a talk about how to build a entire continuous integration chain using Ansible, GitLab CI, and then Kubernetes on DigitalOcean to host Drupal sites, and the various problems that people will encounter during that effort, and how we at 10.7 actually went about solving each one of those. And there's some links to some code samples as well to help get people off and running.
Cool. And how was the session received? I mean, what's the state of the Drupal community as it relates to Kubernetes? Are you finding that you have to explain intimate details about this is Kubernetes, this is an orchestrator, this is how it works with Docker, or is it more advanced?
A lot of the people who go to camps don't even quite know what Docker is. And that's kind of par for course for depending on which event you go to. Flyover Camp is a new camp. There are several people there which are very experienced in terms of delivering infrastructure. But there's a lot of other people who've heard, what's this Kubernetes thing? I don't know anything about it. Let's go watch the session with the weird person who's dressed up as a Jedi.
I think that's perfectly normal behavior. I don't call that weird at all. We should, never mind. Yeah, I think it's important that we're having these conversations now, because as people do learn more and more about Kubernetes, it's an open source project. There's definitely an open source mindset behind it, and the more that we can help people understand that, the more that we can help collaborate on that, I think the better off we're all going to be. There's a lot of complex lessons, and things are changing very rapidly, and people, time's valuable. We want to make the right decisions for our organizations and for the community at large. So definitely appreciate what you're doing out there. Cool. And both of those links are actually in this document. For those that are watching the video, it will be linked there. And they both have full recordings that have been posted up on YouTube, so I encourage you to check those out. And Michael, do you want to spend a few minutes maybe talking about some of your ideas with Amsterdam?
Yes, so I'm part of the DrupalCon Amsterdam, I'm not even sure how it's called, the Community Advisory Committee or so. So basically it's DrupalCon Amsterdam is organized by Kuoni Congress, which is a for-profit company, but there is a team from the Drupal community that helps them make decisions to make sure that DrupalCon stays what a DrupalCon is. And that's, I'm part of that. And besides of that, I'm also helping with the track selection stuff. I'm not one of the track chairs, but I'm just helping them in some things. And one of the discussion we had is if we should do summits or not. Because I really said I would love to have a Kubernetes summit where we basically we can do what we're doing right now, but a whole day. And we have sessions where we can talk, where we can learn from each other, where we can, I mean, a fail track would be awesome. Like the biggest Kubernetes fails with it, or like the biggest head bangs. But unfortunately, we decided as a team, there will be no summits at DrupalCon Amsterdam because organizing them is a lot more work additionally. And the space wasn't there, blah, blah, blah. So what I did though instead, I talked now to the track chairs of the DevOps track and told them, hey, what do you think about what I called like a 3-track or a 3-session track where we do 3 sessions right after each other that are in the same room. So you could call it a mini summit, but we're not going to call that because there are no summits there. But and the idea is that we basically have the first one will be a regular session, and I would really like to get somebody from the Kubernetes community or maybe from Google to come to DrupalCon and talk to us about, I don't know, the future of Kubernetes or whatever, like something more that could be interesting, because DrupalCon is also about bringing external people in. And so if you have ideas of people that you know that could come to Amsterdam, please tell them, and I can reach out to them as the official team, inviting them to DrupalCon Amsterdam to talk. So that's the first thing. That would be a regular session. That might happen or might not. It depends on if we find somebody. The second session is, for me, something more like a panel where everybody that currently hosts Kubernetes gets a short 5 minutes where they present what they're doing. So are you running Kubernetes yourself? Are you using managed Kubernetes? Are you using a Kubernetes distribution? And how do you deploy? So this is more about just that I really would like to see an overview of what is out there and how many people are actually using Kubernetes. So that will be the second session, sorry. And the third one will be another panel where we talk about the different open source tools that help Drupal to be deployed into Kubernetes. Because I've made it a bit my personal goal to not end up with what we currently have with the local development environment, where we have 35 different ways how to run Drupal in Docker. I would really like to prevent that we not have 35 different ways how to run Drupal in Kubernetes. And the third session, the panel should really be about of people that are interested in looking into Kubernetes and Drupal, that they hear what is out there, and also hear maybe what is the difference. Let's say, I mean, like us, we are maintaining Lagoon compared to DDEV Live. Okay, like how far are they? But there are also other ways. Like there's maybe, I know Florian uses Helm. So it would be interesting for somebody that uses Helm a lot. So like having a bit of different discussion to give an overview. And actually the third topic, the third session, I would love that the information that we have there ends up on Drupal.org. So if somebody searches for Kubernetes on Drupal, or Drupal on Kubernetes, that they maybe end up on a Drupal.org site that shows the different solutions and explains the pros and cons, but that's future stuff. But the panel is really about that. So these are the 3 sessions that I think would really, and the overall goal is really to bring the Kubernetes community together at the DrupalCon to share and stuff like that. And I proposed that already to the track chairs. They're very interested in it. They feel like that would be really cool because they definitely want to have some about Kubernetes in there, but they are not sure, like if like somebody like a SIG comes to them and says, hey, we as the Kubernetes community, we make our own mini track inside the big track, they can hand that over to us and we can organize it ourselves. And so they can say, okay, there is the Kubernetes stuff happens there. And but I'm gonna need to write a bit more outline. So right now it's just like 5 lines of text, and I wanted to wait for this meeting to also hear what you think. If you think that's a great idea, or if you think no, let's just do regular sessions, and also maybe already hear who is interested to be in which of these sessions. Because if I go to the track chairs and say, hey, I already have 10 speakers for these 3 sessions, they almost cannot say no. Like, it's gonna happen if we have something. If I go there and say like, oh, I just have an idea, but I don't have any speakers yet, it's gonna be very hard. So yes, so I'm interested, I guess, first, just hearing about what do you think?
I really, really liked that approach there. I just PM'd you a suggestion for a speaker.
Okay.
Kelsey Hightower, I think might be a good one. Yeah, no, that's awesome. I'd be happy to help out as much as I can.
And we can reach out to some of our reps to see if we can get a Google conversation going as well. I think Tess is expressing interest as well. I know I'm definitely interested in everything that you said. I think that you know, one of the things that I think may be underappreciated in the Drupal space is the amount of impact that Kubernetes is going to have and the number of people that are actively starting to work on it. So I think having a good conversation is important. So anything that you need from us, definitely let us know.
Cool.
Yeah, I'm in.
Excellent. Anybody else have thoughts or ideas about that?
I think Florian wanted to say something, but you muted yourself again?
No, I just said I'm in.
Okay.
But yeah, I think that it's a very good idea. And it might help to get more momentum.
Yeah, Kevin, I think my only just sort of broad observation about that is that this subsection, even sort of just the competence and expertise level of the group of people in this Zoom and in this SIG, I think speaks to something that's been happening more broadly in Drupal, which is that this is enterprise software that gets run by enterprise organizations largely, and I think the only sort of community concern there, is that sort of divide between I think somebody earlier mentioned the average, or I think it might have been Tess, the average sort of attendee to a camp, and probably the vast majority of people at the bottom of that sort of pyramid, the bulk of people that are using Drupal and doing development on a daily basis, versus the stuff that we're talking about here is very highly technical and requires a high level of expertise and staff to do. And so my concern there, and even I think that's reflected in just those of us who are doing this and then trying to translate it to developers, is maintaining that accessibility. And I think at a certain point you just have to say this is an expert level track, and there are pathways into this community. But that would be my only concern, Michael, with trying to sort of, not maybe co-opt is the wrong word, but kind of edge in a little mini summit into DrupalCon Amsterdam is going to be that, what we're doing here, I think this is great, but it's also this is a table that should be open to everybody, but also this is not a beginner group either.
Yes,
so that's
right. But that also speaks to the ethos of why at least me speaking personally, of why I do what I do with Kubernetes and why I'm trying to do basically these systems, because for me it's not just an enterprise conversation. I come from a very small place. I learned Drupal and went to much larger places, and as a result of that road that I went down, I learned a lot along the way. I made a lot of different mistakes, and I've consistently seen those enterprises take revenue from smaller shops, smaller independent people. And for me, it's a motivating factor to bring this technology out so that people that may not have this level of exposure and experience with this can understand that they can also use it in a way that is very beneficial to them, or they can align with people that can help them make that transition so that they are more competitive, so that they remain future-proof and that they are relevant as we continue to evolve as a community. So for me, there's a lot of communication that needs to happen around that to really diffuse the fear that this is an enterprise thing that's stepping in, but it's in reality, it's for me, it's much broader than that, and that's just my personal opinion.
Yeah, no, and my heart is with you, right? The reason I bring it up is to make sure that it doesn't, you know, that we address that, especially if we're going to do this stuff at like community events. Like, I think Kubernetes, like for the organization I'm working at, like, it's a force multiplier, right, to be able to do more enterprisey stuff and not have to spend millions of dollars. So I think if we can communicate that, that's good. But I'm with you 100%. I just want to make sure that we have a pathway in if we're going to do this at community events.
I think, Brad, you have a good point there. Yeah, I think if we can maybe look at also at some sort of a session and tracks that really just explain what is Kubernetes and why is it so powerful.
That's actually one, maybe if I can jump in there. I still expect that there will be a Kubernetes 101 session or so, which will give somebody that has heard of Kubernetes, give an overview of what it is, how it works, and then we can maybe in that session, then we can say, hey, if you're now interested more, there's going to be a 3-track session thingy going on, but that's then more for like high level stuff. And I expect actually that probably everybody that does anything with Kubernetes has submitted such a session to Amsterdam. I know I have, and I think Tess just wrote that she also did. So yeah, there's probably going to be multiple of them, but that part I then leave to the track chairs to decide how they want to handle that. But I agree, Brad, it's definitely, but for me, it goes from the other way around. Like, I had multiple times that we sat in, for example, BOFs around Docker, where 3 people were in there that have never heard about Docker, 10 others, 20 others use Docker every day. And at the end, we talked about what Docker is. And I feel like, not that it's bad, these 3 people want to learn, but it's also, we didn't have time to actually talk about it too much. And so maybe saying, look, these 3 sessions are really higher level or are full technical. If you have no idea what it is, there is that other session for you to go and learn about it. But it's a good point, yeah.
Yeah, I think being able to do both so that both groups are able to, you know, because I bet, you know, there's so many people lining up just trying to figure out what the heck this is. And I do also think that there is a good point there also around what defines a cloud native application. A cloud platform and a application can meet the criteria of being cloud native and not be Kube native. I can post some details later on in the Kubernetes.
And that's why I raised that 12-factor app piece, because I think a lot of the Drupal side of this, right, like is doing that stuff.
It's true. Once you get Drupal to support a proper 12-factor app model, then running it on Kubernetes is pretty easy. But I guess one of the things, like with regards to having an introductory session, what I've seen is that most of the introductory sessions that have been given at other events is pretty much what's a pod, what's a stateful set, and so on. And at the end of a 2-hour workshop, people are like, okay, I created a bunch of resources with Minikube. I still have no idea why you would do this. And I guess the why, it really comes into context. So it's really different if you're coming from the ground of like you have one big site and you want to run it in a very highly performant way, or like us, we have an organization with a lot of different sites and we really want to focus on the productivity of the developers. There's a lot of different aspects. Like I guess Kubernetes is not a goal in itself, and I guess it might be easier to cover that also in a kind of panel format, kind of saying, hey, this is why we are switching to Kubernetes, or why we are using Kubernetes, because I personally think if you want to learn how the API works, the documentation is great. There's no need for a presentation for that.
Yeah, that's a good point there. Yeah, that's Florent. Yeah, I cannot. Yeah, thank you enough for mentioning that. Kubernetes also is suffering a little bit right now for being the new silver bullet that every CIO and CTO is telling their organizations to immediately start using too, without backing up and asking why.
Yeah. Okay, so what I will do then is I will write out a bit more these 3 sessions with in-depth what it's about, and does everybody has access to the meeting minutes? If you are interested in talking in these sessions, maybe add your name at the bottom of the meeting or at each of these sessions. That would be great. And so I have a bit more that I can go to the track chairs, and I will send that over to the track chairs and see what happens. The session submission ends in 2 hours or 3 hours, I think. And I think there's a meeting tomorrow with the track chairs where I will present our ideas.
And you know, I know we have easily a half dozen sessions. At least half of them are touching on some variant of Kubernetes with different levels of complexity as well. So I don't know if the track chairs need help reorganizing or recategorizing some of these to be able to accommodate this, but definitely reach out and just let us know.
Okay.
But I think go ahead.
I think the 2 people that do it, they should be able, but I will tell them that, yes, hey, if you have a question or if you want us as the SIG, maybe take over the Kubernetes part of the DevOps track, and we're happy to do that. That sounds good.
Great. So
one other thing I had is what would be also really cool. I hope that this thing happens and in the evening that maybe we do a beer going together, all the Kubernetes people. And I wanted more to ask if somebody's interested in organizing that beside of me. So if somebody wants to organize a get together, more an informal, and maybe where we can share more war stories, that would be also cool. Because I think there's a big opportunity for us to share more stuff.
Cool. Well, let's add that to the meeting document. And if anybody's interested in doing that, we can go ahead and sign up there, I think. If anybody doesn't have access to that, it was originally set up kind of mimicking the way that the Kubernetes community does their SIGs. So there's a mailing list that you can join, a Google group essentially, that will give you access. But if you don't feel like doing that, or you just need to access directly, ping me in Slack. I'm CyberSWAT in the DDev channel or in the Drupal channels, and I'll get you access immediately, because we do have limited time as a result of the deadlines that we have for session submission. Cool. Does anybody else have anything to add around that topic? Excellent. So I guess we can move on to I don't know if we should call this war stories or learning opportunities section of the presentation, but does anybody have any challenges or celebrations that they'd like to share?
Oh,
I guess one of the, well, it might be a bit early for a proper celebration, but my colleague Yannis did some very nice work on a first CSI plugin implementation, and I mentioned last time that we've been trying out a few things with our clone, and we're aware this is not the necessarily the ideal solution for a very high performance, high traffic site, but we found out that it actually works out quite well if you just want to get a site quickly up and running and the idea of using object storage as a backend for a volume driver. It's actually works well for Drupal. So it's not POSIX compliant, but it gives everything that we need for Drupal files. And it also has the big benefits of just only using as much storage as you have files and never needing to extend storage or anything like that.
Quick question there. Is that for like the entire site, like the code base, or is it static content?
It's only for the file uploads.
Nice. Wow, yeah, I'd love to see more about that. Yeah.
Florian, can you describe? So is this a volume driver, or and what backs it?
So it's a volume driver, and it's using rclone, which supports a very, very long list of various backends. The typical one that you would use would be S3 or something compatible, but for example, it also uses it also works with Google Cloud Storage, which has even though it has an S3 compatible compatibility API, it would actually be much nicer to just use the Google Storage API directly, and that's what rclone supports. You can also use things like Dropbox or Google Drive that don't make sense in this context, but yeah, and it's a generic Kubernetes plugin or a generic CSI plugin, so it could be used in a lot of different cases.
So what is the elevator pitch on using that versus like I've been pretty active in the like Fly system ecosystem, as well as I worked with Wim Leers on adding proper stream wrapper integration for like CDN module. What's the elevator pitch on doing like a volume that then is backed by object storage versus like having Drupal use a stream wrapper for that?
Yeah, so we actually tried both approaches. The advantage is that it requires absolutely no modification to Drupal. So you pretty much, well, all the files are uploaded through Drupal. All the files are served by Nginx. That's also mounting that same volume. So it's pretty much a drop-in replacement.
I got it. So it's like a zero conf kind of deal. Okay.
Yeah.
Which I can say is awesome. Like we tried multiple times to convince customers to use like S3FS or whatever, and it's because then they have the module locally installed where the module doesn't work, and like all these pains. So if you can like abstract it from the platform level, that is awesome.
Yeah, Florian, is that written up anywhere? Because it would be like I'm intrigued by the promise of that, but like every time that I've ever used like a file system, you know, I haven't used a volume driver for it in Kubernetes, but every time I've used like a file system sort of that's backed by S3 or whatever, because it's still an HTTP call. And then I guess to Michael's point, like I've so far addressed the sort of local development piece by just like you can like Fly systems wrapper around sort of those stream wrappers, so like you can replace, you can basically mock that with just like you can just say this is local storage on my local, right, instead of actually backed by GCS. So, but is that written up anywhere for it? I'd like to look at it.
I just posted a link. So it's yeah, we haven't like tested it more than that. So apparently it works. I haven't tested it myself. I've seen the demo from my colleague, but yeah. So that's we haven't done any kind of load testing on the setup either. So don't use this in production. But,
wait, that just did.
That's interesting.
And correct me if I'm wrong, the other like much more experienced people in the room, but like you couldn't deploy that into a public cloud, or at least like most big public clouds, you can't bring your own volume drivers, right?
No, you can. That's what we're doing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's the
I
key.
guess it depends what you call a public cloud. Like,
Well, like you couldn't do that on GKE.
That's what we're doing.
Oh,
you can.
okay.
Might need more on that. I actually have not tried to load a CSI. Other than I think when I tried to play with Rook ages ago, but I think it is very doable. Generally speaking, if you have to change flags on any of the control planes stuff that they have hidden away, that's generally the only place I've seen where you can't do it on GKE. But I think we've been talking about the object storage. I think that's almost something you would have to look into in like a new major version of Drupal is first-class support for core Drupal using object storage, and also maybe looking at getting away from just classic MySQL and looking into maybe even support for some of the new, what they're referring to as like the new SQL type databases. Cloud Spanner is a pretty well-known one. I know has anyone tried using BitTests, the Cloud Native Foundation distributed MySQL offering with Drupal yet?
Can you drop a link for that? How's it spelled?
EITSSS.
Yeah. I'll drop a link there.
Yeah, Jason, I would maybe. I mean, it's not a common pattern, but I would maybe challenge that there isn't like first-class support for like doing the object storage thing in Drupal. I mean, it could always probably get better, but like the stream wrapper piece of that, I think is good. There is if this group, and I suppose this sort of speaks to that just like 12-factor thing I threw out there at the beginning, like if this group has interest in like those kinds of things, especially like ahead of Drupal 9, there is a ticket that has gotten like no love in the core queue for dropping the assumption and sort of requirement for the public, like local stream wrapper in core, and I don't think it would be particularly difficult to do. You can do it in practice. It's just like you can't install Drupal that way. But I don't think there's too many places that would require that. So that would be a thing that, like for a Drupal 9 kind of goal, like I think that would be totally doable.
Yeah, definitely. I do confess I haven't personally poked around the core PHP base there. Yeah, I'd definitely love to learn a lot more with that. At least making it an option, and I think maybe as adoption of more and more Drupal sets are running on Kubernetes, it may eventually just become a standard.
It would be great if we could find a way to promote like a module like Fly System to an experimental core module, because we're using Fly System right now, and that is really, really nice.
Yeah, I've heard it.
Fly Systems, I mean, the core of it is that League of Extraordinary Packages package, I think, or at least there's some, or like I think there's some overlap there. I can't remember, but I mean, the upstream of that is pretty good. Like the core, like the module is actually just a pretty dumb wrapper around like the upstream Fly System, which has got a lot more usage than just Drupal.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, I guess it would be nice to see what can be done in terms of getting this into core. I guess it's probably not easy and requires a good amount of time, but it is indeed something that would like raise a lot more like attention as well.
Great. Well, I do want to be respectful of everybody's time. Please, if you can, spend a few minutes looking over the meeting notes from this meeting. If there's anything that you'd like to add or anything that you'd like to contribute to the Amsterdam conversation, please do so in that document. Again, if you don't have access to it, just ping me and let me know. And unless there's anything else, I think we can go ahead and wrap up. Last call. Okay. Well, thank you all for your time, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.